So if you have a client that is considering the move abroad, either because they're excited to travel or for the cost reasons or, some combination of these, if you're sitting down and starting to think, okay, practically, what do we need to think about if you're going to make such a move? Where do you start with those sort of conversations?
I think one of the first things to consider is whether or not you want to or you would be comfortable living that far away from family. Especially if you have children, grandchildren, or elderly parents, being that far away from home may be difficult. One of the other things to consider is whether or not when you move, will you buy or rent your home? I mean, because this is such a life-changing event or a major life experience, you may want to rent for, say, the first year or so, just to get a lay of the land, also to figure out whether or not, retiring abroad suits you well. And then in the meantime, you get to explore a bit, you get to look around, explore some of the area to figure out where, if this does suit you well, where would you like to live most within that country or the city. I think then from there, you also need to consider whether or not you plan to split your time between the U.S. and the Tuscan countryside, for example, or you plan to live in Tuscany year round. And then that may play into whether or not you decide if you're going to maintain your home here in the U.S. or the property you have here in the U.S., or if you're going to sell it. So I think those are some of the first few major considerations. And then from there, you can consider, all right, well, now I need to think about the logistics of getting my belongings from the U.S. to the Tuscan countryside, right? So maybe a little more complicated than, say, moving from New York to California, for example.
Yeah, and another thing comes to mind for me, at least, beyond just those things that Shomari talked about, is if you're going to a country that speaks another language besides English, right? I mean, a lot of the world typically accommodates us Americans when we go out. Like English is the language of commerce and business, right? And so a lot of people in a lot of countries do, but depending on if you're retiring in a small town or something, they may not speak English or understanding the different cultural dynamics of living in a new place and how that's going to interact with you and whether you're going to be able to align with the people that because you're in their country, right? So are you going to be able to align with their cultural practices and things like that? And just understanding that the conveniences that we have here in the U.S., where there's a 7-Eleven or a gas station on pretty much any corner, right? If you're talking about near big cities or suburbs, those conveniences may not be in your new country and how that may impact your life when you're moving. So these are things to think about as well on a practical standpoint.